There we go. And I'm going to be ranking the 3.x characters based on if I regret pulling them or not. Let's start with the first 3.x character, right? It's Herta. In every single one of my accounts, Herta has carried it. If Herta was on my account, I was sleeping. 3.0, I was sleeping. 3.1, I was sleeping. 3.2, I was sleeping. Anything that wasn't single target content, I used Herta on, which was a lot of content. And if I went back in time, back in 3.0, I would still pull Herta. She's one of the most valuable characters for me, even to this day, because pure fiction will always exist, right? So just the fact that pure fiction still exists means that Herta is a very valuable character for my account. She's fallen off in the other endgame modes, but that's fine. You know, it's been like almost a year and I'm still using Herta. Like, that's insane value to me. So in every single one of my accounts I pulled Herta on, which is 2 accounts, she's carried it and given me very easy times in endgame. So I'll say, yes, she carried my account. Next is Aglaea. I've only pulled Aglaea for 1 account. I love Aglaea. I think her design is awesome. I also think she's a really good character. I think I forced myself to use her. Objectively speaking, I didn't make the best Aglaea investment option. The one account that I pulled Aglaea on, she was E0S1, which is a terrible decision. She should have been E1. If she was E1, I think she would be here and carried my account, but to be honest, the hypothetical doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I forced myself to use E0S1 Aglaea even though I had better options. It's just a fact that I cannot avoid. That doesn't mean that Aglaea is a bad character. I did not make the proper investments where she would have carried my account. Objectively speaking, if I didn't like Aglaea, I should have never pulled her. At least in the state that I ended up with her being. Next, tribbie. Yeah. Do I need to explain this one? Tribbie is just so versatile, and it's the same thing with Herta. Anything that Herta crushed under her heels would also be crushed by tribbie, which is a great amount of content already. And she's still finding use in pure fiction. She also doesn't have the weakness of Herta, where she's a DPS, she's a support. So she's gonna be used in more content than Herta ever was, and Herta was already used in most content for me. So I don't think there's gonna be any argument from me that tribbie has absolutely carried my account. If I wasn't using Herta, I was using Blade. And if I was using Aglaea, I would also use tribbie sometimes. If I was using mydei, I would use tribbie. I would just use tribbie in like every team that I could. And I didn't even like force myself to do that. That's just a natural decision point that I had to make because she's just so flexible. Next is mydei. I've only pulled mydei in my European account, and it's the same thing with Aglaea. I don't like mydei as much as Aglaea. I also like mydei's skill animations and gameplay a lot more, so I did force myself to use him, but only because his gameplay was fun, which is the best way that you could force yourself to use someone. But anyway, he was good for 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and by 3.4, I think I lost my love for him. It's just I'm really disappointed by his performance nowadays. Like, I guess in Aglaea's case, it's because I pulled Cyrene for my Aglaea account, but in my account with mydei's case, I pulled for tribbie's E1, and he still felt mid. So I don't know. If I were to go back in time, I would not pull mydei. I would pull someone else. The reason why I did use mydei a lot was because the account that I pulled him on, my European account, was new, and I didn't have an HP scaling DPS. And I really hated Castorice and what she was doing. I believe she was still... yeah, she was out on the beta at that time. Going back in time, I think I would have suggested that account to just grab Castorice because she was a much better investment in the long run. And at some point, I felt terrible running mydei on gameplay-wise. It also is the fact that he didn't get as much support as the other characters did, like Castorice, so it ended up being not a fun time to try to be a mydei main at that point. I mean, I pulled him E0S1 too, so it wasn't like he was underinvested or anything. And then I ended up pulling Hyacine anyway, so it's like I got his bestest slot team, but I don't think I necessarily think mydei was a worth it character for me at the end of the day. Next, Castorice. I didn't pull for her in any 3 of my accounts out of spite. This isn't a value tier list, right? Like, if I was gonna be objective about value, if I only allocated Aglaea's cost, she would be much higher. Mydei would probably still stay the same here. And castorice would be really high. This is just my personal experience with these characters in my accounts. And some of it is very situational. Next, hyacine. Dude. Alright. Again, same case as these two. Except I think hyacine was a lot better because she was a sustain. So I'm not a person that runs sustainless a lot. And hyacine is a unit that feels like I'm running a sustain, but it still feels like sustainless in terms of numbers. That's how fucked up it kind of gets, right? Next is anaxa. I've only pulled anaxa on one account, so I don't think he carried my account necessarily. He had a really high usage in that one account that I pulled him on, in my American account. I'm looking forward to using anaxa to the point that I can put him a tier above carrying my account. Because this guy is one of the most fun and versatile characters. I don't regret pulling him at all. His vertical investment is not so crucial, and he's so versatile that I could invest in his supports and he would still end up in a higher usage rate than aglaea can. On his release, I could use practically any support that I already had. Like, I didn't need to pull for him. He just ended up on my account and he was usable instantly, which was great. If I give it another patch and he's usable for one more patch for me, I think he's carried my account. Like, I would love to put him here, but realistically, he's too recent for me to put there. Okay, next, cipher. I regret pulling cipher. Okay, so cipher is the only character that I regret pulling in 3.x. The reason why is very specific. The thing about cipher is that she's a generic support, right? And in most of my teams, I would rather run tribbie. And tribbie is a much better character for her best in slot team than cipher trying to sub in as a flex, right? Like, if you're running herta and you have tribbie on dial, you're not gonna use cipher. You're gonna use tribbie with herta. And the two teams actually that are best in slot with cipher around that point was Feixiao and Acheron. Now I have Acheron, so that was fine, right? But the problem became I already had Jiao Cho for Acheron when cipher released, and I had anaxa and herta. So in MOC, I would run anaxa and herta in different sides, and it would feel really good. If I tried to run Acheron instead of anaxa or herta, even with cipher, it felt so much worse. So I didn't use Acheron with cipher for that. The main usage of Acheron in 3.x for me was using her in pure fiction. And the character that made that work wasn't cipher, it was Jiao Cho. So what ended up happening is the only reason I would use cipher is for Acheron, because I already had the great options unlocked. And the only reason that I would use Acheron is for pure fiction, in which case I would rather just use Jiao Cho and Taylor. It ended up feeling much better. So I just never liked using cipher at all. It just never happened. When I did use cipher, it would end up being a team that felt a lot worse than anaxa or herta. To be fair, I didn't pull cipher's signature, but I didn't pull tribbie's signature either, so I guess that shouldn't matter, right? I didn't pull for Jiao Cho's sig either, so that shouldn't matter. I just feel like I should never have pulled cipher. I was fine with my Jiao Cho. I probably was better off just pulling cipher's sig than cipher herself. Anyway, phainon. Didn't pull for the guy. I wish I did though. Like, I wish I pulled for him over some other characters. Like, I feel like if I wasn't in such a rush to clear endgame, I probably would have skipped mydei for just phainon. But that's how it goes, I guess. Saber. I pulled for Saber in my European account. She did well enough. I think she's gonna be high usage rate in a couple of patches because I invested pretty well on her. And she feels nice. She's not like overly as noticeably good as anaxa for my account, but yeah. Archer. Okay, let's talk about Archer. So when Archer released, before he released actually, I really liked his design. Like, I think this character being a very big brain skill point spammer was great. And it also made use of my sparkle pulls that I regretted. So he did a 2-for-1 deal. He was a character that made me feel like he was worth it, and also sparkle was worth it. So that was nice for the overall balancing of the game. And once I played him, he did not disappoint. He was very fun to play. Let's go back to Cipher, right? When Archer released in 3.4, he was strong enough to not need Cipher. And that was fine by me, because I would rather use Hanya, because I love Hanya. And after 3.4, cerydra released. And Archer started to feel a little worse that I couldn't run Hanya anymore. At least with really high effort. So when Cerydra released, I just replaced Hanya with Cerydra, and he feels like a great DPS again. I feel like he suffered a bit from having anaxa in the same account as I did, because if I was gonna use Archer, I would rather use anaxa because the dopamine is too strong, but still, he cleared Anom Arbitration for me with Cerydra. That was funny. And meshing cogs and without sig, like holy shit, this guy's crazy. And even though I didn't pull, actually I never pulled for anything. I didn't pull for any of this guy's stuff. I didn't pull for his sig, I didn't pull for his E1. I didn't pull for Sparkle because he existed. I already had Sparkle. I still feel like he was a great investment for some reason, even though he was free. For now, I think he's very high usage. I'm looking forward to seeing more use out of him. Okay, next. Hysilens. Yeah, here. The only reason why she wouldn't be here is because, you know, she's fairly recent too. I love Hysilens. I've only pulled her on one account which has DOT coincidentally, so, you know, that was a very smart decision. I also pulled for her E1, and I do not regret it. She's a very overpowered character, at least for now. The only fear that I have with Hysilens is she's probably gonna end up dropping a few tiers, because I feel like the Hysilens update was the DOT update that we're gonna get every year. Like, it's Hysilens, and then for a year we're gonna have DOT radio static. I'm going to enjoy her for now at high usage, but I think after a year she's gonna drop to here. That's just how it works, I guess, right? But I do have E1, so I think it's gonna last a bit longer than that. And I might pull for the fish rerun. Maybe I'll get her sig, actually. But either way, I don't regret pulling Hysilens. She's the main reason why I got four cycles on Anom Arbitration. So she's my character that I was able to 2-star with. So thank you, Fish. That was very nice of you. Next, Cerydra. Same thing as Hysilens, but I feel like Cerydra's gonna age a lot better. So in time, she might be able to get up here. Again, she's surprisingly one of the characters that I found most use of recently. Using her with Archer was unexpectedly goated. Using her with anaxa was predictably one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And I can see in 4.x Cerydra gonna be a lot more useful, that I would put her here. I didn't even pull phainon actually, so that's kind of insane that she's here with Archer and anaxa. So yeah, I don't regret the Imperator. She's my most expensive character in my American account actually. She's E1S1. The next character that's most expensive is Fugue at E1. So she's my most expensive character, and I do not regret it whatsoever. She's perpetually stuck as my Anom Arbitration clearer and my Brute Force unit. Next, Evernight. I pulled for her sig. Does that count? If I put her sig into account, I think I would put it at decent usage. But the character itself, I didn't pull. I never bought into the castorice propaganda, even though optimally I probably should have, but yeah. PT. In my American account, I use Aventurine with his sig. And I feel like Aventurine is a much safer sustain. So even though PT gave me a bit more stats, I still used Aventurine because he was so much safer. So even when I'm using anaxa with Cerydra, I would still use Aventurine because he's a much more comfortable sustain. The only reason I was able to use PT and Anom was because the enemies don't hit hard enough. And then in my Asia account, I pulled for Cyrene, but I would still rather use Hyacine because she charges Cyrene so much better. Or I would go sustainless with RMC, and the alternatives were sometimes better. So it was like, I would try to use him in a aglaea team, right? But I would really love Hyacine more because the charging would give aglaea so much more energy and it was a lot more fun. And it was also a lot better for my clear time, ironically. I would try to use him with Archer, but the thing about Archer is I would rather use Aventurine because he doesn't need to skill spam to keep his shield up. This was actually a really big problem in the first Anom Arbitration. When PT released, I would try to use Archer, Cerydra, permansor terrae, and Sparkle. The problem became that PT was not safe enough to the point that I would still use Aventurine because he can basic attack. He didn't need to skill most of the time. which would be, again, more archer multiplier. I feel like he relies on his sig too much for me. I have enough power in MOC that I can go sustainless, so I don't need him there. In Anom Arbitration, his sustain is not strong enough that I would rather use Aventurine. My other accounts, I just don't have Sunday, so it doesn't matter either way. He's not gonna get most of the damage boost, and I would use someone like, I don't know, Huohuo. So it's like, he never found his footing in any of my accounts. But it's not like he's useless either. I would still be able to use him. It's just, he's not groundbreaking my account in any way compared to these four. If his interactions stay, would I have used... Yeah, I definitely would have used him more. Oh god. But no use in crying and stuff that never released in the live server, I guess, so... He's not useless, it's just he never broke grounds with my account that I expected him to, unfortunately. Cyrene. Okay. I've only pulled Cyrene on one of my accounts, and I'm very heavily considering her pulling on a second one. Now, she's too recent for me to put in high usage, but she made my Aglaea feel much better. I am really considering pulling for her in my American account for anaxa. Like, she feels like an absolute beast with anaxa. The only reason why I'm not is I'm saving for Constance. I know that's a terrible decision. I know that's like the worst. Like, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you pull Constance on an anaxa account? But here's the thing, I already have Butil, and I want Butil to get stronger, and Constance is the best way to do that. And we're also getting a break chill in the next Anom, and I really want a break character updated for that. Regardless, I don't regret pulling Cyrene. At least for now, she feels very strong. I also have reservations on her power level with anaxa, because anaxa is so flexible, I might just end up replacing Cyrene. Like, it's a toss-up, right? So, while I don't regret Cyrene, I also don't have high hopes for her. So, I think I'm confident in pulling her in this decent usage. So, yeah. Who knows what the future is gonna bring? I think most likely she's gonna go down a bit. The only reason she would go down is if Aglaea got a better support than Cyrene, which is very unlikely. But for my anaxa account, I think there's very likely gonna be a better anaxa support that I'm not gonna want to pull Cyrene either way, so that's fine. She's not useless. I forced myself to use Aglaea, but I also used Cyrene with Hysilens, and Hysilens the best character on my Asia account, so that was fun too. Actually, I might put her here then. She enabled my Hysilens to do a 2-star on Anon, which is funny. She's somewhere between these, right? But I'm gonna put her here just to be a little bit less generous. Brace for impact with 4.x, but either way. So yeah, that's my Amphoreus characters regret tier list, I guess. This is not a value tier list in any way. It's just that certain circumstances in my account led to this tiering, right? Like, I think for other people, Cipher would be very high, but the coincidences and the overall makeup of my roster just didn't make Cipher feel like a good character. Like, if I pulled a little bit differently, Cipher would be much higher. Same with Aglaea. If I pulled Aglaea in a different way, she's E0S1, which is a terrible decision. If only Aglaea was E1, she would be, like, here. But I didn't invest in her smartly enough, so that's why she's down here. As with some characters, I don't think pulling differently would have changed. Like, I think mydei would still be here. Anaxa would be here just because he's flexible. Archer would still be here because he's free. Hysilens is here because I got her E1, but I think if I didn't have her E1, she would only be here. Cerydra, even without E1, I don't think would be changed here. She would still be here. I think these top three, I think for any account, I would still just recommend. Even Herta, it's like, sure, she's dropped off in MOC and AS without high investment, but she consistently clears one of the endgame modes. What more could you have, right? I would also recommend Evernight, I guess. So yeah, that's my tier list. I'm curious to see what your guys' tier lists are. I guess this is the part where I end the video, but yeah. I guess for YouTube, I'll say see you later.